web TV of the Chamber of Deputies. I would also remind everyone that remote participation, online participation, is allowed according to the modalities established by the Rules Committee. Today's agenda includes, within the fact-finding activities on Italy's engagement in the international community for the promotion and protection of human rights and against discriminations, today's hearing includes the hearing in video conference of representatives of the Eritrean Coalition for Democratic Change. On behalf of members of the committee, I would like to welcome and thank the participants for taking part in our activities. We have connected online Ms. Sarah Ogbe, Ambassador Haile Menkerios, Mr. Tamrat Seyum, Mr. Fetwi Kifle, Mr. Ogbazi Debus, Mr. Desbele Mehari, Ms. Birikti Gebremedin. The Eritrean Coalition for Democratic Change is a coalition of 11 political parties, together with movements and organizations that aspire to bring democratic change to Eritrea, promoting a culture of peaceful coexistence to ensure security, peace, and social justice. Currently, Eritrea is governed by an authoritarian regime. President Isaias Afwerki, in office since the independence of 1993, has blocked the democratization process launched with the adoption of the Constitution in 1997, and is also intensifying repressive measures. In the latest address at the UN General Assembly on October 25th, 2023, the Special Rapporteur on Human Rights in Eritrea, Mohammed Abdel Salam Babiker, highlighted worsening of the situation due in particular to the introduction of long-term military conscription. The UN expert documented the use of coercive practices, including collective punishments on entire communities and families to force individuals to join the Eritrean Defense Forces. And there have also been cases of detention and harassment of vulnerable persons, including elderly people and pregnant women. Families have been forced to leave their homes. Sometimes their homes were completely destroyed, their cattle were killed, and families are left in a state of poverty. Babi Ker, the Special Rapporteur, also reminded that Eritrean armed forces during the conflict that ravaged the region of Tigray in Ethiopia are also responsible for severe violations of human rights and humanitarian law in terms of large-scale massacres, sexual violence, gender-based violence, looting, destruction of humanitarian infrastructures, kidnapping, and attacks against refugees. As highlighted by the Special Representative of the United Nations, the civic state remains at a deadlock. Eritrea is a single-party state where no group or political government of civil society can organize activities, and for the past 30 years, there have been no elections, going against the basic norms of the rule of law, including the separation of powers. UN reports have documented abuse against journalists, political opposers, those who are against conscription, artists, and religious individuals. It is also worth noting the dramatic condition of refugees and asylum seekers. At the end of 2022, 160,000 refugees and asylum seekers were recorded based on UNHCR data. Individuals who have to endure very dangerous and perilous journeys and are often victims of trafficking in human beings. Although it is part of the Council for Human Rights, Eritrea continues its policy of non-cooperation with special procedures of the Council and with other mechanisms for human rights, including the bodies envisaged by the United Nations Treaty. The Department of State of the report by the United States was also very critical vis-à-vis the human rights situation in Eritrea, which was published last November, where there are risks. There's a risk of lack of independence of the judiciary, illegal recruitment of children in the armed conflicts by the government, restrictions in freedom of expression, freedom of the media, restrictions in freedom of religion, and activities of national and international organizations for human rights, as well as systemic violations of freedom of association for workers. Now, given this background information, I am now happy to leave the floor to Ms. Sarah Ogbari for about 20 minutes. You have the floor.
Thank you, Honorable Laura Boldrini, Chairperson of the Subcommittee on Human Rights, distinguished members, ladies and gentlemen. We thank you for holding this important hearing, and it is a great honor and pleasure to be here to address the human rights situation in Eritrea. The Eritrean Coalition for Democratic Change is an alliance of 11 opposition organizations. It's a coalition that aims to bring together all the Eritrean forces for democratic change under one umbrella that is more efficient and effective to bring about a meaningful democratic change in Eritrea that is long overdue. It aims for inclusive, transformative transition to democracy, constitutional governance, rule of law, sustainable peace, and social progress. This delegation represents the diplomacy wing of the coalition. Please allow me to introduce my colleagues. Myself, I have been introduced by the Honorable Chairperson. So we have here Ambassador Haile Mac-Oriot, Diplomacy and International Relations Advisor of ECDC. Mr. Ta'amrat Siyum, member of the European Diplomacy Desk, ECDC from UK. Dr. Fetwi Kifle, member of the European Diplomacy Desk, ECDC from Switzerland. Mr. Desbele Mahari, member of the European Diplomacy Desk, ECDC from Italy. Mr. Albasgit Bus, member of the European Diplomacy Desk of ECDC from the Netherlands. And Ms. Brikti Gabremedhin, member of the European Diplomacy Desk, ECDC, Italy. Now, I would like to call upon my colleague, Mr. Ta'amrat Siyum, to give the House a brief insight into the human rights situation in Eritrea. Mr. Ta'amrat.
So you are giving the floor to Mr. Ta'amrat Siyum. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay, good. Go ahead.
Yes. Thank you, Dr. Sarah, for your wonderful introduction, and thank you, ladies and gentlemen, for accepting us into this hearing session. I would like to give you a brief presentation around the human rights situations in Eritrea. Can you allow me to share my presentation, please? If the host can allow me to share the documents, that would be good.
Yeah.
Can you all see it there?
Yes. We see the slide.
All right. Okay. Yeah. So this is a brief presentation around the human rights situations in Eritrea, just to explain to you some of the grim realities that's currently gripping Eritrea. Just to give you a brief background, as you probably understand, Eritreans fought for 30 years for independence from Ethiopia, and Eritrea officially became an independent country back in 1993 with a popular referendum held at the time. However, the expectation of the Eritrean people during the War of Liberation and that period of huge sacrifice was that an independent Eritrea will be a country with justice and democracy, a country with at peace with itself and with all its neighbors and international community, a country that's economically better off and progressed and prosperity will be, and it will be, the expectation was that it will be a country for its citizens. Despite all of that expectations, what we have seen today, what we see today is there is a huge gap between what we expected and what the Eritrean authorities are delivering. So this is manifested in different ways, but briefly I try to summarize that in 4 areas, one of which is an existing and continued political repression and human rights infringements. I'll explain more in detail later on. And economic stagnation, and in some sectors even there is a regression, the economy going backwards from what it was at the time of independence. And there is also a destruction of the social fabric. 1/3 of the Eritrean people is now living abroad. Young people, more and more thousands of young people are fleeing the country. And families are, some of my families are in Canada, others are in Libya, others are in Italy. You know, that's the reality for every household in Eritrea. So the social fabric is completely destroyed, and there has been diplomatic isolation from the international community, 2 or 3 times sanctions by the United Nations, and the Eritrean government continue to get involved in subversive activities in the internal affairs of mainly its neighbors, and at times there were armed conflicts with its neighbors, Ethiopia, Djibouti, Sudan, and the like. The focus of this hearing is because on the human rights situation. I will go on and focus my presentation in that area. So just to give you, when I say there is a political repression in Eritrea, I can give you some background information. Eritrea, ever since independence, has no constitution. We had a constitutional making process upon which the constitution was ratified by the then National Assembly back in 1997, but that remained unimplemented, and President Isaias Afwerki came on television and told us that constitution is dead. We don't know who killed it. But then he promised to have a new constitution. But that was in 2016, and since then there is no any constitution or there is no any constitutional making process going on in the country. So one thing I want you guys, ladies and gentlemen, to bear in mind is this is a country with no any legal framework, and there is no any constitution, and there has not been election. Eritrea is a one-party state where national parliamentary elections have never happened. The people who led the revolution to independence, the people like Isaias Afwerki and his colleagues, they are the ones still leading the country with no mandate from the people. No parliament, the transitional legislative body that was composed of 75% from PFJ, the ruling party, and other 75 people were elected by the same ruling party were there, but that National Assembly or the legislative body was disbanded back in January 1992. That's 2000, sorry. The last time they met was in January 2002. That was just to approve the arrest of some of their own members. So since then, there is no free press. At the time of independence, during the early years, there were some flourishing free press, and that was going on for some time, but in 2001, the government shut down the free press, arrested 13 journalists in the free press, and since then, we don't have any journalists. There's only one television and one radio station, which is completely owned by the government, and they always disseminate government propaganda. And the Eritrean people have no any way of expressing itself because there is no any free press in the country. So this being the background and the reason why we highlight these areas, that there is no election, there is no constitution, there is no parliament, and there is no free press, is you can imagine for yourself in a country where these things are absent, you do not expect human rights, be it individual, citizenry, or collective rights to be respected. There is every reason for human rights to be continually abused because there is no any institutional and legal framework to uphold human rights in that country. So I just want to give you some facts in here. Human rights violations in Eritrea are committed in the form of arbitrary arrest and enforced disappearances, torture, and persecution, restrictions to freedom of religion and belief. The only religions that are allowed to operate in Eritrea are Islam and Orthodox and Catholic denomination of Christianity. But all others, mainly like the Pentecostals and Jehovah's Witnesses, are banned, and people are arrested, and there is no, and even with the Islam and the Orthodox and Catholic, there is constant government interference, including and arrest patriarch of the church. So there's of freedom of opinion and assembly. People have no any right at the local level or at the national level to express themselves and to get involved in the political life of the Eritrea. And there is forced labor and mass conscription of the young people to an endless military service. And that's why you can see many young people are fleeing the country and coming to Europe, mainly via Libya and then through Italy. We will talk in detail on that one in my next slide. And there are plenty of reports regarding prevalence of widespread and systemic violations of human rights committed by Eritrean authorities. And from such, most observers have dubbed Eritrea as the North Korea of Africa. It's just similar to North Korea in many ways, because there is continued and systemic, widespread human rights violations. The indefinite national service, with its impact on the human, economic, social, and cultural rights of young Eritreans, continue to be unabated, unchallenged. And that's why, as I said before, that you see many Eritrean young people fleeing the country through Sudan, and sometimes, you know, they couldn't make it to their destination and end up in the Mediterranean Sea, for example, the incident of Lampedusa in Italy, and some of them are killed and their organs harvested in Libya and other areas of the Sahara. So on 8 August 2023, the United Nations Independent Investigator on Human Rights reported that during this national service program, Eritrean youths are subjected to inhuman and degrading treatment.
Sorry, we can't hear you well. Maybe something with the something wrong with the connection.
All right, okay, let me just get closer to it. Can you hear me now?
Yes, maybe better if you get closer. Thank you.
All right. Yeah, thank you. Sorry for that. So on the 8th of August 2023, the UN Independent Investigator on Human Rights in Eritrea reported that during the national service, Eritrean youths are subjected to inhuman and degrading treatment, including sexual and gender-based violence, forced labor, and abusive conditions. So that's why you see many people, many Eritreans coming to Europe and fleeing to everywhere in the country. Everywhere in the world you go, you can find an Eritrean youth migrating from Eritrea. And the basic reason behind that is the continued compulsory military service and the inhuman treatment that people are faced in there. So as long as these root causes of the issues are resolved, I don't think that will stop. And as you go, there's an estimated around 10,000 prisoners currently in Eritrea. And once you are imprisoned in there, you have no fair trial. You are not brought to court. They put you, there are more prisons in Eritrea than schools. They put you in prison and you are forgotten. Your family have no right to talk to you, to visit you. You are just, once you're locked up, you are locked up in prison. And a good example of that is called what's otherwise known as the Group of 15, G15. These are high-ranking government officials, ministers and the vice president of at that time, and army generals. They are locked in prison from September 2001, and we don't know whether they are alive or dead in prison. There is reports that some of them have died, some are still alive, but we don't know. And families are not allowed to visit them. And members of the Pentecostal churches and followers of Jehovah's Witnesses, they are arrested in hundreds of them, if not thousands of them. And the same fate is happening to them. We don't know where they are. Once they are taken from their homes and put in jail, nobody asks, and there's no any system, including that happens to some of the Orthodox Church leaders and Catholic priests as well. And torture is commonplace, as you can see in here. The ones that I highlighted in blue in my presentations are source documents that I will explain later. So you can go and see people reported, people who managed to escape from prisons continually report that every night you hear shouts and cries of people being tortured in prisons. And that is the life of the daily realities that every Eritrean faced by the authorities. And there has been, on July 2012, the United Nations appointed a special rapporteur. The United Nations Human Rights Council appointed Professor Mohammed Bakir, the Sudanese academic in international law and human rights, as a special rapporteur. And in August 2020, 8 years after his appointment, the special rapporteur reported that there has not been any kind of or any improvement in Eritrea's human rights handling. And he said that Eritrea has not put in place an institutional and legal framework to uphold minimum human rights standards in a democratic society. The country lacks rule of law. There is no constitution. There is no independent judiciary to enforce protection of and respect for human rights. He also said that there is a widespread impunity for the past, no accountability, no authority or no one take responsibility for what has happened in the past. And he also mentioned that there is ongoing human rights violations to this day. Arbitrary arrest, incommunicado detention continued unchallenged, so as violations of the rights to fair trial, access to justice, and due process. So there is enforced disappearance and lack of information on disappeared persons, and this is part of his report. I have the link to the main report that you can go and see when you have time as a reference if you need be. So conscription into the country's abusive national service continues. Secondary school students, some still children, continue to be conscripted in their thousands each year. And indefinite national service involving torture, sexual violence against women and girls, and enforced labor still continues in that country. Thousands remain in open-ended conscription despite the alleged peace deal with Ethiopia, because before 2018, the government pretext was that, oh, we will continue to have national service because we have a threat from Ethiopia. But 2018, they said they signed a peace deal, but even after that, the government still continues to round up and conscript people forcefully. And those who joined the national service in 1994, they are still there. And as I mentioned in my earlier slides, there is a social, economic, and human rights impact of, forcing people to stay in the army for longer than needed. Restrictions on the media and media workers still continue. A free and independent press continues to be absent from Eritrea. And 16 journalists, including those 13 initially arrested back in 2001, are still in prison, and they are without trial. One of which is a Swedish journalist as well. He has a Swedish and Eritrean citizenship. Several restrictions on civic space, restrictions in citizens being largely unable to exercise their rights to freedom of opinion expression, peaceful. So all in all, the president enjoys an unhinged power, and the country is ruled by a clique and not by institutions or any legal way. and the people have no any way of participating in the political life of the country. Therefore, there is rampant human rights violations in Eritrea. Having said that, I have highlighted here some of the resources for you to look at. So this is a hyperlink, and if you click on that, it will give you the detailed documentation of reports by various sources, including the United States State Department report 2023, Amnesty International report 2023, Human Rights report 2023, and also UN rights experts report, and United Nations Human Rights, again, another report, and the UN investigators report, the special rapporteur report as well. So there are plenty of reports that you can refer to when and if required. Having said that, I think my next slide is just to what we want from you, what we want the government of Italy and the people of Italy to help us with. I think we need you to fully appreciate and understand the gravity of the problem that the Eritrean people currently face. We need you to understand those grim realities. This is how life means in Eritrea, and we need everyone to understand and appreciate the situation. From that, we want the government and people of Italy to raise human rights violations as issues of concern when you are engaging with the Eritrean authorities and call for reform or change. We know that since the president came to visit Italy some months ago or so at the Italy-Africa summit, there has been some kind of agreement. Okay, it's good to engage, but during those engagements, we want you to focus on the plight of the people, on the suffering of the Eritrean people, and not just forget that and make a business deal with the authorities. Just raise those issues and press for change. We want you to do that. We want you also through your connections, and Italy being a major player within the European Union, we want you to take this matter to the European Union and other stakeholders and discuss with them on how to help improve the human rights situations in Eritrea. And providing political, diplomatic, and technical and financial support to Eritrean diaspora-based organizations and movements. ECDC, as Dr. Sarah explained earlier, is just an organization of 11, a coalition of 11 different organizations. But outside of ECDC, there are plenty others with whom we are outreaching so that we can build a national big umbrella organization. We are in the project and in the process of doing that, but we need some kind of support from you. For example, we want you to support financially and technically so that we can have a radio station by which we can reach out to Eritrean people. We don't want the Eritrean youth to come to Libya or Italy. We want them to stay at home inside Eritrea and fight for change, make a change there. We advocate for civil disobedience and people to try to determine their own fate. Leaving the country is not a solution. By staying and doing everything possible to make a change is a solution. But to do that, we need to communicate with people. Eritrea, one of the problems we have there is there's a very limited internet access, and we cannot communicate with people as much as we want. So a satellite radio station might help us. That's something we will later on provide you with a detailed proposal of what kind of support we might need. And we also want you to provide us platforms such as this one so that we continue to exchange information and consultation with you. And I hope that this is the start of our meeting, and I hope this is not going to be the last one. We will have regular meetings as and when required, and we want to provide you information and have consultation, and we can discuss on ways of how we can work together so that the human rights of Eritrean people are fully respected. Finally, I would say on behalf of ECDC and the diplomacy department of ECDC and the 11 organizations it represents, I would like to say thank you very much for providing us such a wonderful environment and platform to discuss our grievances and to just inform you the grim realities that the Eritrean people are living with. Thank you very much.
Sì, grazie.
Thank you very much. Mr. Seyum, for your presentation. It was very clear and clearly presented the problems that Eritrea is currently dealing with. I will ask my colleagues, members of the committee, if they would like to ask any questions or if they have something to add. We have a lot of members connected online. They also have the opportunity to ask questions.
Desbil Miari, Mr. Mehari, the floor.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, go ahead.
Io volevo intervenire.
I wanted to speak in Italian, if that's possible. I live in Italy, so I will be speaking Italian. Because we also have problems in Italy that we have to deal with. You know very well that 2% of Eritreans, refugees or non-refugees that are living in Italy or resident in Italy or in other countries around the world, they have to pay a 2% tax. I think this is a very serious matter that should be reviewed, because it can be considered a sort of sanction, punishment on Eritreans who have to pay this tax. Even though they work in Italy or in other countries, they still have to pay this additional 2% tax that is deducted from their salary. And they're threatened that if they don't pay, they will be sanctioned, or they will be sent to jail, or there will be a retaliation on their families back home. There's also another element that I wanted to mention, in addition to what my colleague said. There are some refugees that have asked international protection to democratic countries, including Italy. And these individuals are still victims of the dictatorship back in Eritrea, although they are protected by other democratic countries around the world. So I think that there is something that is not quite working in this sense. The other problem that I wanted to add in closing cross-border repression exists, although it is very subtle and it is difficult to illustrate the workings of these mechanisms. And they can have repercussions also in other ways, very violent ways, in terms of violence, racism, hate, even by the Western world. And the situation is so severe, so much so that there are paramilitary groups that are trained who are trained in a location called Nakfa, and they continue to threaten the Eritrean diaspora, young Eritreans in particular who are against the regime. And just recently we witnessed some murders in Israel to militants who opposed the regime. So these are examples of situations that I believe are manifestation of the severe violations of human rights that Italy cannot accept. I just wanted to shed light on these situations as well. I would like to mention the fact that we are organizing a conference on June 5th and 6th. We are bringing together experts from different countries, Greece, the UK, Sweden, experts who will be speaking on the topic of supranational repression. And maybe we were wondering if Italy would be interested in taking part in this conference so that we can have a broader understanding of what other countries are doing in this sense and what we can do in Italy. I just wanted to add that, and thank you so much for giving me this opportunity to speak. Thank you very much, Mr. Mehari. Thank you very much. And please do send over some more information regarding the conference that will, where it will take place and when it will take place, so that we can try to participate. We did not receive an invitation. This is the first we hear of it. So if you could let us know and give us some more information on this conference that you mentioned, that would be very helpful. Thank you. We will certainly send over our invitation. Okay, so let's see if we have other members of the committee who would like to add something. Unfortunately, we do not have much time left. At this point, I will take the floor just to close and to thank the members of the Eritrean Coalition for Democratic Change, because they take on a huge task to raise awareness among the population and in other countries, and to share and illustrate the situation in Eritrea and what Eritreans are currently undergoing, violations of their human rights, and the lack of any sort of perspective for future generations. So thank you very much for this enormous task that you have taken on. I would like to ask Mr. Mehari if you had any contacts with direct contacts with the government so if you spoke with the Ministry of Foreign Affairs in Italy about the situation in the country to report what you've shared with us today. I also wanted to understand if there are still ongoing investments in Eritrea by Italian businesses, and what sort of investments those are, and whether there are UN agencies present in Eritrea, and if there are NGOs, if there are Italian NGOs operating in Eritrea. So this would help me to, or help us to better understand the context, because surely there is some sort of isolation, but we would like to understand how extended this isolation is. And I also say this because you know very well that the Italian Prime Minister, Giorgia Meloni, announced that she would like to relaunch or reinstate relations with Eritrea. And I believe she's referring to Afwerki and his entourage. If this were to occur, I think that we should bear in mind everything that you've told us. So considering that there are huge violations of human rights, and there's a worrying situation in this sense, and that, of course, we mustn't give too much credibility to the regime. So what are your thoughts on this announcement, on the statement by the Italian government, who will be sending ministers, additional ministers, to Eritrea to engage in dialogue, some sort of exchange? We aren't up to date with the details, but they're trying to reopen dialogue with the regime. And we were wondering what, as ECDC, what your thoughts on this are. Thank you.
Ok, penso che
Thank you, Madam Chairman. Sorry, Madam Chairwoman, thank you very much. Yeah, there is quite, and it is an investment when Eritrean companies or Eritrean money is being laundered through by the government in Eritrean government in Italy. It is in itself money laundering, and I know of some companies, mining companies in Eritrea. And also the government does its business. The first stepping stone to Europe for the Eritrean government is actually Italy. So one of the things that we would like as Eritrean Coalition for Democratic Change, one of the things we would like the Italian government to do is to be very vigilant on issuing visas to Eritreans. Because as my colleague Tamrat said, in Eritrea, no one other than someone who serves the government is given an exit, a passport and an exit visa. So anyone who comes from Eritrea and is not a government official with a visa to Italy, it has some mission against the Eritrean refugees and the Eritrean opposition organizations or parties here. So Italy is now becoming, the other country is, of course, Turkey, but Italy is now the stepping stone for many issues and many, let me say, plans and projects of transnational repression against all the refugees in Europe. Yeah. So what we would like to see is the Italian Ministry of Investment and Foreign Affairs to really put pressure on the government of Eritrea before investing in Eritrea. We would like to make sure that the mining companies in Eritrea do not use free labor, which is tantamount to slavery in their companies or in their mining companies. So these are some of the things that we would like the Italian government to pursue or address. In addition, we would also like the Italian government to investigate how transnational repression is being conducted or done on the Eritrean refugees in Italy, like my friend Desvela Mahari just mentioned. Yeah. So I will now leave the floor to some of my colleagues if they want to add something on to that. Thank you.
posso?
Sì, sì, prego.
If I may, I wanted to say something regarding meetings between the ministers and representatives of the Eritrean government. There was a meeting a few years ago with the Minister of Foreign Affairs. I had a meeting with him. I don't recall his name now. It was during the Berlusconi government. It was many, many years ago. But recently there haven't been any meetings, and we have sent over invitations or letters regarding initiatives that were taking place in Italy to try to involve the country, but we didn't receive any response. Regarding the presence of NGOs in Eritrea, the NGOs were kicked out in 2003, 2004, after the G15 group was arrested. You may recall, Honorable Member, Honorable Chair, yes, I do remember, but I just wanted confirmation because many years have passed since this episode. Yes, so I confirm that it is still the case, it's still the situation, and there are maybe some NGOs linked to the government that are present, but the independent NGOs have been excluded, kicked out of the country, and there aren't any currently. About 1 year ago, all health centers of the Catholic Church who were offering services to the population were closed. These centers were closed about 1 year ago, and they are no longer operating. These are centers that offered very important services to the population in terms of health and healthcare. So I just wanted to mention that as well. At the end of June, we were thinking of organizing a delegation to meet with the Minister of Foreign Affairs, if that's possible, or anyone else who would like to meet with this group that we're putting together. So we were thinking around the end of June, so that we can share our perspective on the situation in Eritrea. Thank you. Yes, so let me link to what you've just said. So the UN organizations, are they present in Eritrea currently, or are they not present in the country? There are some offices of UN organizations. I'm not 100% sure. There are some operations linked to the United Nations that are carrying out some activities, but these activities are very limited because the problem is that the government is limited in terms of initiatives that can be carried out.
Sì, il dottor Seyum ha chiesto di intervenire, prego.
Mr. Seyum asked for the floor.
Thank you very much, Chairwoman. I just want to emphasize on what my colleagues have actually said on the element of the transnational operation. I received a report yesterday from a report that was prepared by the Parliamentary Assembly of the Council of Europe. And in that report, I think this was a report that was compiled back in September 2021. it highlights the gravity of the problem of transnational repression as a growing threat to the rule of law and human rights situations. And this was a report of how this transnational repression is committed by the Russian government, by the Turkish, Azerbaijan, and Belarus governments, even to the extent of sending their spies in the UK and other European countries and killing their opponents.
Perché non sono in... Sì, lo sento, però non riesco a partecipare. È la prima volta. Quindi...
Sorry?
Non tanto.
So this is a report from the European Union, I guess, and it highlights the gravity of the situation and committed by the Russians, the Belarus, Turkish, Azerbaijan governments. And it is exactly the same problem that we are facing now from the Eritrean authorities. Just last week, they killed one of our colleagues in Israel, and they continue to threaten families and individuals opposing the government. And some of these people, the spies and those working for the regime, are coming through Italy. They get visas from Italy embassy in Italian embassy in Asmara, and they move to Italy, and then from Europe, and they came all over Europe, and they are the ones spying on us, sending information about us, threatening us, and doing all sorts of nasty things on those people who are up and struggling with the regime. So I think there is a lot that you can do in that area. You can support us. At least it can be highlighted, as the case for Russia and Azerbaijan and others. The Eritrean situation regarding transnational oppression should be highlighted both at the Italian Parliament and at the European level, and it should get the level of attention that it deserves. That being said, I think one of the other things is, as I said before, Eritreans are scattered all over the world. 1/3 of the population is outside Eritrea. And those Eritreans living in Sudan and living in neighboring countries are under constant threat from the regime. They are kidnapped by the regime from Ethiopia, northern Ethiopia, Tigray region. They are kidnapped from Sudan, and all sorts of things are happening to them. And the plight of those refugees can be highlighted as well. And we need your humanitarian intervention in supporting those people and in finding a way for them to go back and resettle at home. So I think there are so many things that we can work together going forward. Thank you.
Sì, grazie. Senz'altro.
Thank you very much, and clearly this committee will continue paying close attention to any developments of the human rights situation in Eritrea, and I can already tell you that there will be a parliamentary hearing on what was said today, and we will ask the government how it intends to engage in dialogue with the Eritrean government, what sort of guarantees it will envisage to make sure that human rights aren't neglected in any way. And make sure, and also to make sure that it remains, the human rights situation, it remains the focus of any future reports. And clearly we will also try to solve this problem of visas. I worked for the UNHCR, the United Nations, for 15 years, and I'm very well aware of the situation of Eritrean refugees when individuals belonging to the regime are issued a visa and then continue to threaten individuals, refugees in the countries that they have reached. So we will try to explore this situation to make sure that those who are under international protection do not feel threatened by representatives of their country who are targeting them. because they fled abroad. So thank you very much for this insightful information, and we will keep you updated on any developments. If there is anything else that you believe this committee could do, please do let us know. Thank you very much, and this hearing is officially closed. Thank you.
Grazie, grazie molto.
Grazie.
Thank you very much. Thank you for giving us this opportunity.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Yeah.